AC Ingles presenta Into the Story, el podcast para aprender inglés con historias reales contadas por gente de todo el mundo. What's it like to leave on a one-week holiday and then return 5 years later? In today's episode, our storyteller Sunil explains how he ended up in this exact situation.
I arrived on the ferry from the mainland and it seemed like another world.
In today's story, Sunil describes his dream of wanting to build a meditation center and how an opportunity to do exactly that arose in the most unexpected place, on a Scottish isle. You'll hear how Sunil learned to snorkel and bake bread at the same time, and how living on an island smaller than his London suburb taught him to embrace life's unpredictable moments. We're calling this episode Grow with the Flow. Before we begin listening, let's talk about some of the vocabulary and expressions that you'll hear Sunil say. The first expression for today is in the middle of nowhere, en el medio de la nada. We use this expression in English as we do in Spanish to mean a very isolated or far away place. You'll hear Sunil talk about building a retreat center in the middle of nowhere. Secondly, isle, spelt I-S-L-E. The word isle usually refers to a very small island, una isleta. Be careful with the pronunciation of this word. Like the word island, which students often pronounce mistakenly as Iceland, the letter S in the word isle is silent. To chop. The verb to chop means to cut something into small pieces with a knife or an axe, una hacha. We usually use this word when we refer to chopping wood or chopping vegetables. Next, to go like that. So if someone says to you that the day went like that, they mean that the day passed very quickly because they were either distracted, busy, or having fun. People might even say the phrase in the blink of an eye, en un abrir y cerrar de ojos, to emphasize their point. It's a slang expression that we use more in conversation than in writing. To go like that. Finally, to tune in. The phrasal verb to tune in has two key meanings. It can mean to become sensitive to something. For example, we can tune into someone's emotions. Tune into can also mean to start listening to a radio program. For example, we tuned into the live broadcast of the football match. Tune into. As always, you have a full transcript, vocabulary list, and listening comprehension activities on our website, acingles.com. That's letra A, letra C, ingles.com. Okay, let's get into the story.
There was a time when, I was in London. I was doing a job in IT just to kind of live, really. I knew from the very beginning that I wasn't that into it, but I had to pay the bills. After a number of years, I was getting the feeling that I really needed to get out of London. So I had this idea that I could go and live in Spain in the middle of nowhere and create some sort of retreat center. I imagined creating a quiet space surrounded by nature, and I imagined lots of different people coming there from different backgrounds, spending a little bit of time there just connecting with themselves and coming away feeling kind of more clarity and peace in themselves. I had this idea in my head, but the reality was kind of different, and there was a lot of different steps to take and a lot of things to do and learn. I wasn't really prepared for it because I had no experience of living in the countryside and I didn't have a lot of the skills. I felt like what I wanted to create was so far away and a kind of big mountain to climb. A friend of mine invited me to visit her in Scotland. So So she lived on this island called Holy Owl, and she invited me to go there for a week. She just suggested, well, maybe you just need some space, and maybe you'll get some inspiration as to what to do next. I'd been to Holy Owl previously. It's like a 2-kilometer island. I'd said, yeah, you'd never catch me living on an island like this. I remember I arrived on the Friday. I arrived on the ferry from the mainland, and it seemed like another world. It's quite a like ancient looking island. They call it like Scotland in miniature, and it's got like these big mountains on the north end. You kind of even they're quite jaggy, and you kind of get a sense that maybe a pterodactyl will come flying over the mountain, because they look quite old. Yeah, I remember the water was like really, it seemed like it could be in the Mediterranean, it was like turquoise. I arrived on Friday, and then on the Monday we went to volunteer with this Buddhist organization that my friend was involved with. And they were building, in fact, a retreat center on the Isle of Arran. We went back on the Tuesday, and on the Tuesday somebody there suggested, oh, do you fancy staying here and helping us build this retreat center? I think there was a struggle. There was a little bit of a battle going on between this part of me that was saying yes to what was being offered, and the part of me that wanted to sort of keep control and wanted to kind of like fulfill my dream in my way. I would try to work out like rationally what the best thing to do was. So my way of doing that was to kind of create these endless lists of pros and cons, and I would go around thinking about it over and over and over again until like I was in more of a mess than when I started. And at one point I think maybe I just had to kind of let go of that. I thought, well, I'm not doing anything else, and I always wanted to build a retreat center, so I thought, why not? I started off just chopping vegetables in the kitchen, and so we catered for like retreats of up to 60 people. It was really cool, actually, because it wasn't like working in a normal restaurant. It was relaxed, and it was quite a lot of fun. There were a few characters. There was a Geordie. He was also a shiatsu practitioner, so I remember sometimes I'd be cooking and chopping vegetables, and he'd give me like a kind of shiatsu massage while I was chopping, or we'd often like break out into spontaneous pot and pan playing in the kitchen. Yeah, living on this island was a little bit like kind of being back at university with a close group of friends. You were kind of living 24/7, living and working 24/7 with them, and it was quite a lot of fun. I mean, you got to know people really well, and I remember at breakfast there were jokes coming out, and we were already laughing, and the day kind of generally went like that. I'd make lunch, and then there was a little bit of a gap between like dinner time, and in that gap we'd often make bread. So I learned how to make bread. I was making like 12 loaves at a time and put it in the oven, and then I'd nip off round the corner and go snorkeling off this beautiful like red rock, and there was like seals there and amazing fish. The water was like freezing cold, but I just like run back to the kitchen and warm myself up, standing by the oven, which was like baking the loaves of bread. So I think it combined quite well, baking and snorkeling. I ended up staying, in fact, for like 5 seasons, so like 5 years. I ended up doing things that I never imagined in a million years. I learned to cook, I did some building, I learned carpentry, I ran workshops to do with like creativity and meditation. I used to also lead like dance workshops, and I never imagined this like when I was like an IT geek living in London. Being on that island was great for me. I ended up doing things that were a little bit more physical and creative, which is what I always wanted. I spent a lot of time practicing meditation. Really, that helped me kind of heal a lot of things. I felt kind of more connected to myself. I'd come to the point where I felt like I'd done all I could do. I left after 5 years. So now I'm actually coaching people in creating work that they love. I'm really exploring this idea of how one can tune in to this instinct and inner knowing to kind of navigate in life. Because I think that experience taught me that to let go of fixed ideas. And all I had to do was kind of like jump in the river. Things don't necessarily have to be the way that you imagine them. And actually, sometimes when you let go of that, they work out even more amazingly than you'd originally planned.
That's all for today. We hope you enjoyed Sunil's story. Si te ha gustado este podcast y quieres apoyarnos, déjanos 5 estrellas en iTunes. Para conseguir la transcripción, vocabulario clave y ejercicios del episodio, visita acingles.com. Thank you for listening. Until next time, we hope you have a good time, or at least a good story to tell.